sure we mute me. Shh. Okay, so if we look at Google Classroom, I posted something called Intro to Assemblies, which something is right here. So inside of Unit 3 now, we're done with Unit 1 finally, yay! Unit 2 is what it's supposed to be under, not Unit 3. I don't know why I put it on Unit 3. But when you click this link, it goes directly to this Learn Support thing again, okay? Should go right to what we need it to go to. And if it doesn't, I put in here, you go to Design Assembly, Tutorials, Assemble, and then Top-Down Design. So again, Assemble, and then you go to Tutorials, and you go to Assemble, Top-Down Design. We're just doing this top-down design, and this is to kind of get you into the mindset of basically how assemblies work, how a part works, and what a body and a component mean. There's a lot of little things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you guys really quick how to do this thing. It's not going to take that long, trust me, just so that you guys can understand where they're going, because there's a lot of things on here that they're missing, so I want to make sure that you guys have all the information you need. So the first thing it tells you to do is basically just draw a simple rectangle. So you start a new sketch, just like we always do, rectangle from the origin. It tells you to make it like in millimeters. So again, mine is not in millimeters. You change it up here, go into millimeters, press OK, start that rectangle again. And I think it's by 50 by, I think it's 120, something like that. Just for the example, it doesn't really matter. And then it says to draw a line. It says to draw, 50 by 120. It says draw a line over 150 or 50 millimeters and then drop a line down. So this is where it starts getting a little confusing, because you start to draw a line, it's pretty easy, 50 over, 50 down. And then when you have this random line, it says to then draw a circle that's like about 40 milliliters or millimeters, and then about the center of this. Well, that's very broad. What I would do is literally draw, and once you slide up and down, I'm not clicking at all, find that midpoint, and then you can see you kind of like guide it over here. And then as you can see, the blue pops up and starts making it about that area. Just try and get it around 40. You do not punch in a dimension here. Don't punch in a dimension. And don't do this while I'm doing it, because it's going to get really fast really quick. Okay? You about 40. Right click, you press OK. That sketch is done. You can press Finish Sketch. You're going to do this piece. The next step that it tells you to do is basically to start extruding stuff. Now this is important, because if you start clicking one, you can't undo it. Okay? You can't undo it. Stop working while I'm working, please. So what you're going to see here is it says first part, this little weird C-looking thing, you're going to extrude it 20 millimeters. So if I make that 20 millimeters, extrude just that outside piece, just like you guys always do, 20. I don't even have to set it up. And then you press OK. Well, if you pressed OK, you'd be in trouble. It says right here, new component. The difference between a body and a component, okay? This is important. You cannot move or edit a body. You can only move and edit a component. So what you have to do is make this a new component. Think of it as a part in an assembly, okay? So I'm going to call this component, and I'm going to press OK. Now you see all your stuff disappears. It happens all the time. Remember, go to the sketch, you turn the little eyeball back on. And it tells you to do all this right down here, okay? It also tells you to make it a new component, like I said right there, just in case you forget. Expand again, and it says to do the circle now. This one's a little weird. So these are symmetric. We didn't talk about these before. So when I try and extrude just the cylinder, you got to make sure you get both parts. You'll see that this other little part is not there. You're going to go to, instead of one side or two side, you're going to make it symmetric. And what that does is basically when I extrude it one way, it'll extrude it equally in the opposite direction. So if I look at the dimension, it says to make it 30 millimeters, and again, a new component. So I'm going to say distance, 30, and you can see it goes to the thing. Don't join it. If you join it, it basically locks it into that part. If you were to cut it, it would cut away from that part. If you were to intersect, it would basically delete everything except for the intersection part. If you're making a new body, we wouldn't be able to do anything to it. And a new component, again, allows you to make a whole nother set and a whole nother part. Once you click that, you'll see it pops up a whole other component over here on the left side. Okay? These are two separate objects now. So it says, again then, new component. After you do that, you press OK, and then go to Inspect Component and Cycle Toggle. Basically all this is doing is allowing you to see, because right now you see two gray little things. If you go to Inspect, and then you drop down to Component Color Cycling, it changes the colors automatically for you. And that'll make it easier for you to see multiple objects within in this space, just so that when it gets really complex, I mean, these are simple shapes. When it gets really complex, you're going to want that. So now, I'm going to come over here and it says to modify, press, and pull. Now do two-sided and make one 5, the up one, and the down one 10. So now when I go over here and extrude this last piece, I'm not going to do one side, I'm going to do two-sided. I'm going to go up, and I'm going to make this one 5. And then I'm going to go down, and I'm going to make this one 10. And as you can see, it kind of makes a whole other part. And we're not joining it. You see how if I joined it, it would make it pink. If I make a new component, it changes the whole entire color and allows it to be a completely separate part. That's important. So, keep going, and it says this now, do what's called shelling. Shelling is basically hollowing out an object, okay? So you go to modify, shell, and we want a 2 millimeter thickness. All that's saying is that the walls of this object, or all these objects, are going to be 2 millimeters. So if you go up here, you're going to see shell under tools, under modify. When you click that, you're going to click all 3 objects. It won't let you select, oh, well, great. The top faces for all of them. Sometimes you have to press shift, that's why, or control, that's why I was surprised that it let me select them all. But anyways, you do these faces, and then you select 2 millimeters. And as you can see, it literally cuts the inside of all those objects out. Makes them hollow. Pretty cool. Go to the next part. It says update the sketch. So it says drag the edge of the sketch circle to change the diameter. And then it says to move the diameter around. This is kind of cool. Now that you made these 3 components, okay, what I can do is I can modify, and I leave these sketches on for a reason. When you plug in a dimension, that is locking that dimension in. When you leave it broad, like we did, and I didn't put a dimension in for this circle, you can change them. So literally, all I got to do is click and hold this circle. Sorry. Click and hold this circle, make it smaller, the whole object changes. It makes it 10 times easier when you start making these crazy parts. The next thing it tells you to do is press this center dot and move it around wherever you want, and that's literally all you're doing. If you don't connect a dimension to it, you can move a part and multiple parts all at the same time. And it updated everything you did up to that point. Okay? So that's the kind of the gist of what they were saying there. The next part. It now says to move the components. So this is kind of a cool new feature. If I wanted to move some of these, and you can do this, you just basically take one part, you take another part, you can do whatever you want with it. All it's telling you to do the first time is to move a part and realize that up here, I'll undo that, realize that up here, when you see the part, okay, and you move it, you'll see position pops up down here, okay? If you look at these, there's capture position, and then there's revert. Revert will automatically bring that part back. Let's say you move it and you want it to stay here and that's your home position, then you would play capture position. You don't want to do that. So it's just telling you about that button real quick. That's pretty easy. The next part is probably one of the most important parts of using components and assemblies, and it's called grounding. What this is going to do is it's going to allow one part to be literally locked down and cemented in. When you start making animations and you start making things move, which you'll do today actually, you're going to want things to be locked in. If you don't lock them down, they won't be able to move, and everything will just fall apart really fast. So the thing it tells you to do is click basically the component over here, and it wants you to click this little green box. And then all you got to do is right-click on that little cube that you'll see for the component, and you see ground. Now what you're going to see is this little push pin that's next to that component. That means that the object is grounded. What that means is if I try and move that box, I can't move it. It will never be able to move. The other ones will, and we don't have to worry about that. Okay? But in order to make these other things move, we'll talk about that in a second. So it says to make that one grounded, and then it says to make an assembly, an as-built joint. Basically what you're doing with this is you are going to make these two so that they're, as we built them and as we designed them with circles, squares, all that kind of stuff, basically we're going to make them so that they stay together. So you drop down assemble, and then you go to as-built joint. And all it's telling you to do here is click rigid, leave it at rigid, and make this and this rigid. And you can see it shakes, and all it's doing is basically telling you that it's locked in the X, Y, and Z direction. Okay? So I press OK, and now again, when I try and do that, I try and move this pink box now. It's not going to move because it's sharing that plane, so it locked into that basically piece. Okay, those two pieces are locked in. That's all an assembly as-built joint did. The last couple parts are basically making the animations. So we go to assemble as-built joint, and now you're going to make a revolute, it's called. Select the cylinder and the box on the right. Select the top edge of the cylinder for the position. So this is kind of tricky. If you come in here you're going to go to Assemble, As Built Joint, drop this down to Revolute, and the first thing it tells you to do is pick the components. So I'm going to click, obviously, this component, and I want it to revolute inside of this component. And you can see that now that I did that, all these little nodes pop up. All you're trying to do right now is make this cylinder rotate inside of this object. So what it's going to have you do is pick the very top surface, and if I zoom in, you'll see I just want that piece. And then if I click it, it'll show that that's rotating. Now this doesn't have any surfaces or any texture or anything like that, so you're not even really going to be seeing it. But if I zoom out, I can basically drag that eventually and go into joints and all that kind of stuff, and you'll see this revolute. You can animate that model, and it looks, if you look close enough, it's actually spinning inside of that object. Okay? We're going to get really crazy really fast with gears and all this other stuff coming in here. But the goal is just for you guys to get your hands on some basic shapes, basic animations and modeling. Okay? To get the end, you just basically cancel that. And again, I would right click here and then go to animate model or animate joint, and that'll make that thing move if you want to make it move. Go home. Basically, this view is probably the best view-ish. Let's say this, so that I can see that this is on there, so that I know that you guys made the revolute. Okay? Put that in the top right corner, make sure that that stays on, leave the sketch on, and again, it really doesn't matter where you put this circle. Now that revolute and everything will be locked into that piece. Okay? Take a screenshot of that, and you guys are good to go. Any questions? Okay, that's what you're doing. Go for it. Have fun.